You are standing on a stranger's porch, sweating through your only good shirt, and in the next 10 minutes you are either going to make $14,000 or you're going to throw up in this man's hydrangeas. The screen door is open. You can hear a television going somewhere inside, one of those daytime shows where everybody's yelling about a paternity test. You have knocked, and now there's that long, awful pause where you can hear footsteps coming toward you across a wooden floor, and there is no longer any way to run, even though every single cell in your body is voting, loudly and unanimously, to run. You have a manila folder tucked under your arm with a contract inside it. You have a number in your head that you are absolutely terrified to say out loud. And you have a secret, which is that you have no idea what you're doing. You have never successfully closed a deal in your entire life. And the only reason you are standing on this porch at all is that you ran out of every other option a human being can possibly run out of. Let me freeze it right there. The sweaty shirt, the open door, the 14 grand hanging in the air. Because to understand how a completely broke guy with no money, no license, and absolutely no clue ended up standing on this particular porch, I have to take you all the way back, about 8 months back, to the lowest point of your life, which is, fittingly, exactly, where this whole stupid, beautiful, ridiculous thing started. 8 months ago, you were broke. And I don't mean cute broke. I don't mean I'm being responsible and eating ramen this week broke. I mean the real thing. The kind of broke where you know the exact balance of your checking account at every hour of the day because you genuinely have to. The kind where you've started putting the car in neutral and coasting down hills to save a little gas. The kind where the word opportunity has slowly started to sound less like a promise and more like a threat. And you were sitting on the edge of your bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, doing the exact thing that every broke person on earth does at 1 o'clock in the morning, which is watching videos of people who are very much not broke, cheerfully explaining how they stopped being that way, and that right there is the night you fell head first down the wholesaling rabbit hole. Now, if you don't already know what real estate wholesaling actually is, let me give you the version that hooked you at 1 in the morning, which is also, very conveniently, the version that is just a little bit too good to be true. Here's how it works. You find a house that somebody desperately, urgently needs to sell. You talk to that person and you get them to sign a contract agreeing to sell that house to you for, let's say, $100,000, but here's the trick. You don't actually buy it. You can't. You have, at this point in your life, negative $40 in a car that runs on prayer, so instead of buying it, you go find a real investor, somebody with actual money, who's willing to pay $115,000 for that same house, and then you simply sell them your spot in that contract. You assign it, and you walk away with the $15,000 difference just for being the person who connected the desperate seller to the hungry buyer. You're not flipping the house. You're flipping the little piece of paper that gives somebody else the right to flip the house. And at 1 in the morning, broke down to your last few dollars, desperate and tired and scared. This does not sound like a business. It sounds like somebody handed you a cheat code for reality itself. You did not sleep that night. You have genuinely never been so awake in your life. You watch the sun come up making spreadsheets. But here's the very first thing that nobody tells you. And it is the entire reason that 95 out of 100 people who watch that exact same video at 1 in the morning never make one single dollar. The concept is simple. The concept is so blindingly simple that you can explain the whole thing in 30 seconds, which is precisely what I just did. But simple and easy are two completely different words. And broke people at 1 in the morning desperately, desperately want them to be the same word. And they are not. They are not even in the same neighborhood. Simple is the map, easy is the territory, and the territory, it turns out, is on fire. Your very first month, you did everything that all the free videos told you to do, which mostly came down to one terrifying activity: calling complete strangers on the telephone and asking them if they would like to sell their house. Cold calling. So you bought the cheapest phone plan you could find, and you got yourself a list of names and numbers, and you sat down at your wobbly little kitchen table, the one with the matchbook folded under one leg, with a script that you had printed out at the public library for 10 cents a page. And you took a deep breath, and you made your very first cold call in the history of your brand new empire. A woman answered, and you opened your mouth. And what came out of it was not, strictly speaking, human language. It was a kind of strangled, apologetic squeak. Hi, hello, sorry, I was just wondering, so sorry to bother you, do you, maybe, She hung up before you could even finish whatever that was going to become, and you just sat there, holding the phone a few inches from your face, staring at it like it had reached out and bitten you. That was call number one. There would be, over the following several weeks, roughly 2,000 more of them, and I want to be genuinely honest with you about what 2,000 cold calls actually feels like in your body, because every single video about this conveniently skips this part and plays cheerful, upbeat music over a montage instead. It feels like getting told no for a living. It feels like rejection became your full-time job and forgot to pay you. People hung up on you mid-sentence. People cursed at you with real, startling creativity. One man told you, with genuine venom in his voice, to never, ever call this number again as long as you lived. And then, 20 minutes later, that same man called you back, specifically to tell you that again, just to make absolutely sure that you had understood him the first time. A woman became convinced you were a scammer and threatened very seriously to call the police on you. And the truly tragic part of that one is that you were so nervous and your voice was so shaky and guilty sounding that you genuinely, in your heart, did not blame her one bit. Your mother, somewhere around this stretch, became quietly but completely convinced that you had joined a pyramid scheme. You sat her down and you tried sincerely to explain wholesaling to her, and you got to watch her face take a long, slow journey from confusion to concern, and then finally to a very specific and very devastating kind of sadness that, as far as I can tell, only mothers are biologically capable of producing. So you don't, she said slowly, buy the house. No, Mom, but you sell it. I sell the contract to buy the house. No, Mom, I sell the contract to a different person who buys the house. She nodded the way you nod at a stranger speaking a foreign language. She did not bring it up again, but for the next 2 solid months she texted you links to job openings at the post office, which is, when you think about it, its own particular form of love, and also its own particular form of knife. And then there was the guru. I have to tell you about the guru because it matters. Around month 3, when you were down at the very bottom of the failure, exhausted, humiliated, starting to genuinely wonder what was wrong with you specifically as a person, a man appeared on your screen. He was standing in front of a sports car that you would later strongly suspect was rented by the hour. He had teeth so white they seemed to generate their own light. And he wanted very badly to sell you his proven system for the low one-time price of $1,997, which you did not have, which you would have had to borrow from somebody. And for about a day and a half, in the deepest pit of your desperation, you genuinely, seriously considered doing exactly that. Because here's the thing, nobody warns you about drowning. When you are going under for the 3rd time, anybody floating anything that even looks like it might hold your weight starts to look an awful lot like a best friend. What stopped you from buying it was not wisdom. Let's be very clear about that. It was not some flash of financial discipline. What stopped you was that your debit card got declined when you tried to enter the numbers, which means that you were ultimately saved from making a genuinely terrible decision purely by the fact that you were too broke to complete the transaction, which is, depending entirely on your mood when you tell the story, either the single saddest thing that happened to you that whole year, or by far the funniest. And honestly, most days it is somehow both at the exact same time. So let's check the scoreboard at the 3-month mark, shall we? Cold calls made, thousands. Hours invested, hundreds. Houses gotten under contract, 0. Actual dollars earned, 0. Self-respect remaining. Also rapidly approaching 0. Mother's confidence in your life choices, somewhere in the basement next to the post office tab. And this right here is the exact part of the story where you were supposed to quit. This is the part where the algorithm fully expects you to quit. Where your mom is every single night, quietly praying that you will finally quit. Where every reasonable, sensible bone in your entire body has gotten together and filed the official paperwork to quit. And I'm not going to lie to you, you almost did. You sat at that wobbly little kitchen table one night, alone, and you said out loud, to absolutely nobody in the empty room, okay, 1 more week. I'll give it 1 more week, and then I'm getting a real job. And you meant it. You really meant it this time. You had the post office application open in another tab, half filled out. And then, during that one last week, the week that was supposed to be the funeral, something happened that changed the entire course of your life. And it was not a new technique. It was not a secret script. It was a single phone call where, for the very first time, completely by accident, you forgot to follow the script at all. Her name was Mrs. Alvarez. You called her exactly the way you had called the 2,000 people before her, fully braced for the hang-up, your finger practically already hovering over the button to end the call and move on to the next name on the list. But she didn't hang up. She was quiet. There was something tired in her voice. And you, by this point, were so completely exhausted, so thoroughly defeated, so utterly out of professional sales energy, that you simply did not have it in you to launch into the pitch. So you didn't. You just sort of talked to her. Like a person. You asked her how she was doing today. And you actually waited for the answer. And it turned out that she was not doing well at all. Her husband had passed away earlier that year. And the house, their house, the one you were cold calling her about like a vulture, was suddenly far too big and far too quiet and far too full of him. The stairs that they had climbed together for 30 years had gotten hard on her knees. Her children lived 3 states away and called on Sundays. The property taxes were quietly eating her alive, a little more every year. And she had been sitting alone inside that enormous silent house for months, with a problem she had no idea how to solve and no one to even talk to about it. And you, a broke, nervous kid with a printed script and a wobbly table, were, as it turned out, the very first person in a long, long time who had simply asked her how she was. And then actually, genuinely, stood there on the line and waited to hear the whole answer. You did not pitch her. You forgot to entirely. You just listened. For 45 minutes, you listened to a lonely woman who needed, very badly, to sell a house, and who had no earthly idea how to begin. And at the very end of all of it, after all of that, she was quiet for a moment. And then she said softly, "You seem like a nice young man. Do you think you could help me?" And the entire business, the whole thing, every locked door of it cracked wide open right there, in that one single sentence. And you finally understood the one thing that no guru standing in front of a rented sports car is ever going to tell you, because the truth of it simply does not fit onto a thumbnail. Wholesaling is not a real estate business. It never was. Wholesaling is a people business wearing a real estate costume. Every single house you had been desperately chasing for 3 months had a living, breathing human being attached to it, and that human being was almost always in some kind of real pain. A divorce, a death, a crushing debt, a move they could not afford to make. And your entire job, the whole thing, the real engine of all of it, was never to be slick. It was to be the one single person in their whole week who treated them like a human being, instead of a transaction to be closed. You weren't failing for 3 months because your technique was bad. Your technique was fine. You were failing because you were trying to close people. And closing people is precisely the thing that a frightened, grieving, cornered human being can smell on you from a mile away like smoke. So you helped Mrs. Alvarez, and not in a slick way and not in a fast way. You found her a genuinely fair price for the house. You walked her through every single step of the process slowly and patiently, like she was your own mother sitting at your own mother's kitchen table. You answered the same nervous question 4 times without once making her feel foolish for asking. And you connected her finally with a real investor, the very kind of person you had been far too terrified to even call for the past 3 months. And when that deal finally closed, you made your first check. Your very first one. It was not $14,000, it was $6,200. And you have never, before or since, not once in your entire life, felt richer than you felt standing there holding that single piece of paper. Because it was proof. Cold, hard, $6,200 proof. Proof that the cheat code was actually real. But also proof of something far more important, which is that the cheat code had never, ever been houses. The real code, the one that actually worked, was this: care about the human being first, and the money will quietly follow them right in through the door behind them. Which brings us, at last, all the way back around to the porch. The sweaty shirt, the hydrangeas, the 14 grand. Because everything in your life changed after Mrs. Alvarez. But it changed slowly. The way that real things actually change, and not the way that things change in the videos at 1 a.m. You stopped cold calling people like a malfunctioning robot, and you started, genuinely, listening to them like a human being. And the strangest thing happened. Your numbers went up the more you actually cared, and they went down every single time you slipped and tried to be slick again. You got another deal, and then, a few weeks later, another. You slowly got better at all of it. You learned the real, unglamorous skills, the actual contracts, the actual numbers, how to look at a property and know a good deal from a bad one in about 90 seconds flat. how to talk to a room full of investors without your voice cracking like a teenager's. But the core of it, the beating heart of the entire thing, never once changed from what a grieving widow named Mrs. Alvarez had taught you completely by accident on a Tuesday night. Find the person who is in pain. Be the one who is kind to them. Solve the actual real problem they have. And the check is just a side effect of doing that one thing well. The man standing behind this screen door is named Mr. Boone, and his pain is a different kind. His is the kind that comes carefully wrapped up in pride. He inherited this house from someone he loved, and he cannot afford to keep it, and he will not, under any circumstances, say that out loud. Because men of his particular generation would, in a heartbeat, rather lose absolutely everything, quietly and with their backs straight, than ever admit out loud, to a stranger, that they need a single bit of help. And you know this about him, not because some guru taught it to you, but because you have spent 8 long months learning, the hard way, on porch after porch, that the house is never, ever actually the point. So when this door opens, you are not going to pitch this man. You are going to do the one thing that took you 3 full months of brutal failure and one accidental Mrs. Alvarez to finally learn how to do. You are going to ask him, honestly, how he's doing. And you are going to actually mean it when you say it. And then you are going to close your mouth. And you are going to listen for as long as it possibly takes him to get there. The door opens. Mr. Boone stands there looking at you, this sweaty kid in his one single good shirt clutching a manila folder, and he squints and says, "You the fella who called?" And you say, "Yes, sir. Thank you kindly for letting me come by today. How are you holding up?" And you watch something deep in the old man's face move, just barely, just slightly, the exact way a heavy door moves in the very first second before it begins to open. And you know the way that you know things now, in your bones, that the $14,000 was never actually the thing you came to this house for. It is simply, only, what tends to happen when you are the one single person in an old man's entire week who stops and looks him in the eye and asks him how he is doing, and then stands right there on his porch and waits, patiently, to hear the whole answer. So that, right there, is wholesaling, the real version of it, not the 1 a.m. version. It is not a cheat code, even though I swear from the edge of your bed at 1 in the morning it looks exactly like one. It is the least glamorous, most stubbornly human business in the entire world, where you make your living by walking up to total strangers on what is very often the single worst day of their lives, and being somehow, against all odds, a small and unexpected piece of good news. The houses are completely real. The contracts are real. The money, I promise you, is extremely real. But the actual job, the part that nobody ever puts into the video, is just this. And it's so simple, it sounds like a lie. Be the person who genuinely cares in a world that is absolutely full to the brim with people who are only trying to close. Do that one thing and do it for real. And the porches, and the hydrangeas, and the $14,000 afternoons, they will all eventually come and find their own way to you. You knock, the footsteps come. You take one slow breath, and this time, standing here, you are not afraid. Because you finally know the secret that the broke, terrified kid hunched over that wobbly kitchen table 8 months ago would never, in a million years, have believed if you'd tried to tell him. You are not here to take anything away from anybody. You are here to help a proud old man solve a problem that he is far too proud to say out loud. And the money, the $14,000, it just rides along, quietly, for free. Welcome to the job that nobody ever tells the truth about. Now, go knock on the door.